An analysis of the twists and turns of the lingering war. Global affairs analyst Kunle Falowo joins me on the news this hour. He joins us live from U.S. state of Indianapolis. Mr. Falowo, thank you for joining us. UN is calling for ceasefire, but it's not the first time we've had calls of ceasefire. Do you think that stakeholders in Palestine and Israel are going to respond to appeals of this nature, or perhaps there is another way to make them stop?
So let's just go back to more pretty much what's been happening currently. We have been told that the Hamas representative are in talks, negotiating currently in Egypt with some of his Israeli counterparts to see if they could find a lasting solution and, most importantly, achieve a ceasefire. And that way, we will, pretty much start to gain momentum in the bid to end the war, eventually. But, that's just part of it. Part of the clauses that we've also heard that's been touted in the negotiations of part of the fact that Hamas needs to, as a matter of urgency, release all the hostages that were taken from the Israeli folks. And, we also heard that there are so many nationalities that they've been, taken from Israel, and they're nowhere to be found, but the Hamas are pretty much aware of where they are because they're keeping them. So part of this is to find a lasting solution and talk about this and iron this out. War is not going to be the solution. Negotiation and diplomacy, I can't emphasize this enough, is the best option to this lingering crisis.
If we go by the numbers of fatality that has been recorded in Palestine, if it still weighs on the same measure with the number of hostages that Israel is talking about. But let us talk about the violence that we've now witnessed with the protests in some universities in America, irrespective of the suspension, the ultimatums, and the arrests now in their hundreds. These have not been able to stop the protests from going on. Do you think things can potentially move from bad to worse if the U.S. doesn't act fast?
So firstly, I want to encourage lawmakers, pro-Israelis and pro-Palestinians, to be cautious of the words that you utter. I'm saying this because we've seen a lot of Republicans coming out to make public condemnation of what's going on. I mean, they have a right to say that, but making statements that will incite the people is not commendable. It's not something that people in high positions of authority should consider. Having said that, it is important that we also remember that the students, they've been closely watching what's been going on social media, and they feel like they have a voice. And part of their grievances is that they're not comfortable the way that the U.S. is handling the situation, and the unwavering support that the U.S. is giving to Israel is quite something to look into, because we're looking at Gaza, for example, with 2 million population, and this is more like a genocide. It's looking more like a genocide because you're having a small area that's being bombarded by the Israelis. But let's not forget that this culminated to the effect of what happened in October the 7th, and Hamas, when Hamas did what they did, and this is the results and effects of what they did initially. But having said that, the student have the right to air their grievances, but it has to be in a disinformed, respectful of all the laws, and
I
in
hear
a
you
manner.
clearly, but the way and manner they go about their protest is a function of the number of people involved. If it keeps spreading, I doubt if any government will be able to handle it, even with its security infrastructure. The Colombian encampments have also inspired some unrest in France, outside America, where we see the state now at trying to curtail the anti-war protests in top universities in France. There are possibilities that this could spread very fast even across Europe. Precisely, what steps do you think can be taken? Because it doesn't seem like the arrest is working, even the expulsion and suspension, haven't been able to stop anything.
Well, first of all, we need to guarantee the security of lives and property of those campus communities, and also the lives of those that are protesting. Everyone has a right to protest, but it has to be done in a peaceful manner, and that's the only way that they could be heard. It's important that we give voices to any entity or any individual that wants to air their grievances, which they have absolute right to do so. But it has to be within the confines of the law, and that's what we're talking about. So I would urge the students, in as much as they have the right to air their grievances, they also should remember that it has to be done in a peaceful manner. Let's not forget that, go back to a little bit of history, 3 years towards the end of the Vietnam War in 1972, a lot of students here in America protested a lot, and that kind of saw the speedy ends to the war in Vietnam and U.S. involvement also. So it's been happening. This is not the first time. I wouldn't say this is politically motivated. It's more of people coming out to air their grievances.
I hear you clearly. The point I'm making, however, is that asking the students to conduct themselves properly and within the law is accurate, but the source for this protest is the perception of bias on the part of the United States as regards what's happening in the Middle East. So take, for instance, now tens of thousands of people continue to die in Gaza, and there is no ceasefire. There is no body language on the part of Israel that this is going to stop, and U.S. remains one of the biggest financial supporters of Israel, giving it billions of dollars yearly to buy weapons. Don't you think that's perhaps what the U.S. should be considering? And say to the students that we will take responsibility for what's happening there, and we can do more to keep Israel's incursion within the sanity level.
That's a good observation. However, it's not over yet. Let's not forget that from the get-go, initially they, like I said before, Hamas orchestrated this violence, and this has resulted to what we're having now. However, the involvement of the United States in all of this war going on in Gaza with Israel, it's something, like I said, it's something to always take a second look at. But most especially, we are seeing that U.S. representatives are on ground and talking, constantly having meetings and negotiations and diplomatic conversations with the Israeli and the Hamas side to find a solution to this crisis. This has been happening for a long time. Of course, we should be concerned about the level of involvement by the American government, to say, but nonetheless, it's a big powerhouse. They're very much involved in world economy, in world democracies. But to say the least, U.S. is vested in this because they also have some individuals that are nationalities of the American nationalities. They've also been kidnapped or taken hostages by Hamas. So yes, they are also should be involved in trying to make sure that the people are back safe and sound. So yes, they have a lot of involvement, but we just have to be careful how we word and how we conduct and go about how we can preach peace and diplomacy in this era, because also it's an electionary year. So yes. The U.S. is doing its best, but it's just not looking like it's the best is good enough currently.
Absolutely. Global Affairs Analyst Kunle Falowo, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll return with more stories from around the world after this break. Stay with us.